Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome back, everybody, to the American Made and Paid Show. I am your host, Zach Hing. I got Professor Dreg with me as usual. Today is Thursday, April 18th, 2019, which means the intricacies, the ins and outs of the Mueller Report. So today we're going to dive into that a little bit more, talk about it and how it pertains to a lot of the values that we've pushed on the show, kind of examine it from a different perspective, you know, not just Nadler's response and all that. Obviously, this is still developing as I'm talking about this, as of the recording of this podcast. But we're going to dive into that a little bit more, talk about obstruction of justice and the Fifth Amendment. So, Professor Dreg, have at it.
Yo. No, man, when this report came out, it made me mad. Just listening to everybody just makes me pissed. So, of course, the Mueller Report just came out hours ago, so, of course, everybody's speaking about it. But what everybody's missing so far is the link between the American suicidal behavior that we spoke about yesterday, because you hit the nail on the head. About the funk that debt has, when you have so much debt, blah, 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 blah. And then so with that American suicidal behavior that we're establishing, that the progressives push, and so the link between that and the progressive lust, I mean, they are lusting for this whole thing of obstruction of justice. But okay. It's not just Trump. You got to remember who else, a significant figure, was put in jail for 2 years for obstruction of justice. And that was Martha Stewart. She actually served 2 years in prison for something like this. So the link of suicidal behavior and obstruction of justice should never happen to begin with. Never should have happened. Why? Because it goes against the Fifth Amendment. And eventually, the Eighth Amendment and the First Amendment, but that's another show.
So wait, hold on. How come, are you saying that there was no reason for the Mueller Report to have happened?
Well, no. The Mueller Report was supposed to be for criminal.
That's right.
Actions. And that's what people don't really see. That's where the suicide behavior comes. Think about this. Our founders, right? The people who invented this country, who started this country, who literally invented a new way of governing with their Constitution. And that was, and when I say invent, because people will say people argue, no, there were the Romans, they had the Senate and things like that. It's nope. But what makes this unique is that the founders based it on the principles of the natures of law,
right? Or
as they say, the laws of nature. And that's just another word of saying God. But see, they worded it that way not to offend people, because people really, 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 really need to just drill this in their head. That the Constitution is supposed to protect the minority thought. Not because it's easy to go ahead the masses, democracy.
Mob rule and all that.
It's easy. Yeah. You don't need protections for that because you're the mob. So what you need is protection from that, from mob rule. That's what the Constitution is all written for. The laws of nature, we touched a little bit about Jesus and what Jesus was saying. But I believe, from what you were saying and what you're kind of showing me about, it's always about the minority person, the weakest one, or the one who doesn't have that type of power. And that's how our Congress is set up. Senate is based on, just equality, equal representation, so the mob rule doesn't, really rule. So there's the lower house, the House of Representatives with their massive population. California has more representatives than
right, because it's just a more populous state. Let's define this a little bit more and then break it down a little bit as to how the Fifth Amendment applies to the Mueller report.
Well,
So
okay,
let me define the Fifth Amendment, and then you can kind of chime in.
Yeah, read it.
Yeah. I'm actually going to read it for a lot of the listeners here because we kind of have a faint idea as to what is in our Bill of Rights, but people may not necessarily be very consistent in what they think of it as. So it's defined in our Constitution as no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process or law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That's the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, see, I'm telling you. Now, think about that and think about Trump. Everybody was trying to make him go ahead and speak to him. And because he didn't speak to him, to Mueller, oh, he's obstructing justice. He's obstructing justice because he wouldn't talk. Oh, he's obstructing justice because he's doing his job.
By definitions of them, right?
Well, yeah, by their own, whose definition? And we got to remember, they are the progressives. It doesn't matter who, whether it's Republican or Democrat, they were all progressive. Every single progressive, and that's including, what's his name, McCain, when he was alive, they wanted this stupid Mueller investigation. It's a special counsel. And why? Because Trump did business with Russia. Seriously,
Right.
that's in the Mueller report. Because he had the Miss Universe pageant in Russia, spoke to Putin, and he was also on 60 Minutes with Putin. I don't know if you knew, but Trump and Mueller, not Trump and Mueller, Trump and Putin were on 60 Minutes together. You know what I mean? Come on. So they had business ties. They had entertainment ties together.
Right, but what does that have to do with him and his presidential win in 2016? Just because he did business
for some reason, when you do business with somebody, now you're guilty of a crime.
Yeah, but that's stupid. That's guilt by association. That's like, hey, you stood next to Putin, so there must be some conspiracy that you were working with them.
But that's the point. Why?
Yeah, that's what they've been peddling for 2 years. So
no, but how much money did we spend on that? Seriously, how much money did we spend on this investigation? So think about this. $25 million by my estimates. I could be wrong. Nobody questioned it. Not one person. I mean, some Republicans, but the majority of all Republicans went along with this BS that you're guilty of association. That's totally against the Fifth Amendment. You're not supposed to be,
indicted based on
any of that stuff. Why do this investigation? Just by coincidences?
And it only happened when he won the presidency, an investigation into his win, because the whole premise of this is because how did he win the presidential election without help from Russia? And that's the thing, right? It's like, I guess from the average voter's point of view, which is like mine, the people voted for Trump, right? The electoral college was put into place to talk about, like, to kind of prevent what we were just talking about, which was democracy, mob rule, because he did lose the popular vote. But states like New York and California should not determine the outcome for elections for everybody in the country and neglect the whole middle part.
And that's why the Constitution's brilliant. It really is.
Yeah, well,
that's why it's brilliant. But the thing is like this. Everybody in the media, I don't care if it's Fox News, everybody believes the Mueller report was necessary. Everybody bought into it.
Let me present a counter argument. Don't you think that a lot of these people on the right thought that the Mueller report was necessary to be able to prove to the left that there was no collusion, even though there was no real basis for having it done in the first place?
That's irrelevant, and I'll tell you why. Because the progressives have conditioned everybody to give up their rights. And to survive as a real person, like if you want to be sovereign, if you want to be like a real conservative, if you want to survive on the streets or get anywhere, you have to know your rights and you have to defend your rights, because the only way to make it is really based on those laws of nature. And that's protected by the Constitution. So if you give away your right, your Fifth Amendment right, your First Amendment right, because it really is tight. Like if you just believe that obstruction of justice is a real cause of action, how do you say cause of action? Anyway, but there's something called causes of actions. So, and that's where they get the basis to come up with something like obstruction of justice. It's just some made up.
But based on what? Because he won the presidency, right?
Well,
With
no,
help from Russia.
Based on that, because they don't like him. It's the majority trying to take over anybody trying to come up that's in the minority. And that's,
that would be like saying this in the Old West, and there's an example from a video called Overview of America where democracy is this, where somebody is allegedly convicted of a crime, right? Mm-hmm. And the consequence here is if it's a democracy, everybody agrees that he should be put to death. But what our Constitution does is that it grants you a fair trial, right? That person doesn't die right away. You're granted a fair hearing. You have to, obviously there's a due process that's in place to protect your rights, because even though you may have done this, I think what people miss is the fact that this person is still given the right to a fair hearing, right? Regardless of what everybody feels about him.
And it goes even deeper than that, because we are now talking about mindset. And here's the thing.
I'm starting to see it. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Everybody, see, because now remember, there is the link between suicide behavior and this obstruction of justice. There is a link between this suicidal behavior and this loving to be in debt. There's a link between almost every aspect of progressive ideology and suicidal behavior.
Giving up your rights.
So, but check this out. So Trump was the only one against it because he's innocent. He knows he did nothing wrong.
Right.
Of course he's going to fight it and not participate, because if you're innocent, why in the heck would you participate? Every other sheep or quisling, they're like, whoa, it'll prove that you're innocent. No. Why do I got to prove my innocence? I'm not supposed to prove my innocence. They're supposed to prove my guilt and leave me alone. That's what you just read in the Fifth Amendment. That Fifth Amendment literally said, you got to prove it and you got to leave me alone.
The burden of proof is on them, and you don't have to cooperate unless they actually find dirt on you. You don't have to participate in this investigation whatsoever because that's your right.
Remember this. Every person who participated and agrees with this Mueller report, including Jeff Sessions, including all of these people, they honestly believe that the rights we have come from the government and
not from God, like they were.
Yeah, exactly. See, because
okay,
and that's the thing. So when something comes from the government, automatically you believe you are worthless because you're not a part of the government.
They can decide to say whether you do or die. Who cares if it incriminates you or not? It's whatever they say.
Now remember. Yeah. The laws of nature, every living being will never harm themselves. It's just not normal. You don't see animals trying to kill each other. It goes against human nature.
Well, kill themselves. They kill each other because it's an ecosystem.
Exactly. Yeah. So why would a person give up their rights, their Fifth Amendment right, and participate in something that's going to eventually kill them?
Because we've been trained that way, to give up our rights to authority because they have the power to take it away whether you cooperate or not.
And that is why everybody's missing this whole aspect. Everybody's focused on, well, he's innocent. Well, no, he has the right not to say anything. He doesn't have to participate. He's not supposed to participate because it's protected in the Fifth Amendment, and they invented all of these things to get you. So on the streets, this type of mentality really, really creates this.
Right, because you can create a long-term sort of liability for yourself because you put yourself in a compromising position just by saying, I agree to investigation, even though you may have done nothing wrong. And they can even incriminate you because if you're a part of it, that is an obstruction of justice by their definition.
It goes even deeper than that, because remember, everybody believes the government has the right to do what they did to the president. Everybody believes that. Everybody on the media.
And people shouldn't believe that. You shouldn't.
Yeah, it's the opposite. They had no right to do this. They literally had, it's unconstitutional what they did. And not just because of the Bill of Rights, but, you know, when you read the Constitution and all these powers and stuff like that, they totally went against the Constitution. The courts didn't step in.
Wow.
Nobody stepped in. Everybody's like, well, you know, government so big, we'll just let it happen. And if he's innocent, good.
Well, that's the thing when you have all these departments, right, that are obviously being lobbied against and funded. And people are like, hey, you know what? Because we're in a position where we conduct federal investigations.
Yeah. No. And now remember, when everybody thinks like this, think about this at the local level. So when you're approached by a police officer who believes you've done something and you don't do what he says, because you'll see, and you hear this too, everybody always says, well, just do what the police officer says. Why? Why should I? Why should anybody do it?
Let's define that for a second, because there's now a little bit of a confusion in our culture where, like, think about it, where crimes happen in poor communities, right? You're taught to listen to cops, right? If you don't want to get shot and killed by police, cooperate. So define for the people listening now.
Which is another thing. See, yeah. You hit on something else. It is okay for a cop to shoot and kill somebody. That's insane. How is it that somebody with very little education, and I mean, the only required to be a cop is have an AA. So we're going to give this great power to be judge, jury, and executioner to some dude.
We talked about this last week, right? Because these people not educated and they don't have.
Think about this. Yeah. A cop may or may not be on steroids. And he has very little education, and he has the power to be your judge, jury, and executioner. And they will kill you. But here's the kicker. It only happens in progressive cities. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, and you're right.
But in progressive cities, we are trained to just give up our rights, let these police officers do whatever they want to us. And then when we say something like, hey, look, man, I'm in a hurry. I got to be somewhere. I'm not guilty of anything. And then what'd you say? Because they're afraid or whatever, and then they kill you. And that's the thing. We have to stop that mentality of believing that our powers come from the government, that the government is all powerful. And we're the ones that, you know, through this progressive ideology, we are learning to hate our police officers. Why do we hate our cops? Because our cops only have one job and one job only. It is to find you guilty so they can raise, you know, revenue. That's what cops do. Cops are revenue generating machines that are built to take away your rights.
That's why you need a sheriff, like the old days where, hey, his job was, he was a farmer, but he was also there to just uphold civil rights in his town, right?
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. I'm telling you, we have to scale back the police force in these progressive cities, because like the smaller towns, they don't have issues. Where towns where people are allowed to carry guns, they don't have issues. They really don't. Like you go to any town where it's okay to have, you know, you can carry a piece, you know, a gun. Mm-hmm. You don't see cops shooting those people. They don't say, hey, I thought he had a gun, so I shot him. They don't do that. Why? Because there is nobody's saying anything of obstruction of justice or anything like that. It's more, you know, the laws are
okay. Let's talk about, in a position for an individual, how is it, okay, where is it still constitutional for somebody like a cop, for example, to stop you? Do they, like, what would their rationale be to investigate you, to talk to you about anything?
Okay, so there's two areas, like we'll talk about a progressive area and conservative area, but it's really more important in progressive area. That's where the bulk of everybody lives.
So Democrat-run cities like Baltimore, Oakland.
Yeah, San Francisco, LA. I don't know if Phoenix is, I don't know how Phoenix is, if it's more conservative but it's leaning, I'm telling you.
It's a swing, yeah.
Yeah, and even though it might be Republican, it might be R, but it's really, really turning more and more progressive. It's like a Republican progressive. It's crazy. But anyway, so in the streets, they have a right to stop you for a legitimate reason. Like if there's a, well, this is a bad example, but I'm going to use it anyway, just to show you how stupid it is. But in California, there are over 30,000 vehicle codes that a cop can stop you for. And 30,000 means it could be anything, you know, from your tailpipe to tinted windows.
Yeah, I will stop just for having a tail light that was out or flickering. You know what I mean? It's just any kind of thing.
Yes.
And even like if your trunk is just slightly like you're trying to strap it down because you got a bed in the trunk, and it's like they stop you for that too.
Well, see, but we'll talk about that. See, this is so effing cool.
Yeah, no, it's good that we have these discussions.
because you brought up a good point. See, the theory is for public safety, the police officers stop you.
Right.
For public safety, because if you have a flickering tail light, you know, it's a safety issue. Somebody might not see you, ram into you. Crazy.
That's right. Yeah. So I can understand justifying that.
But hold on. See now that's okay. But when they pull you over, do they have the right to go start searching into your car and all that crazy stuff?
I'm glad you went there, because now that you stop me and maybe they take a look at your character, personal prejudice kicks in. It's like, hey, by the way, can I take a look inside your car? You want to step out for a second? It's like, oh, wait a minute. You pulled me over because my tail light is out. Now you want to search my vehicle?
No, but you know what, though? That is what happens in progressive cities.
Yeah.
And why does it happen? Well, because the mayor tells them to do it. The mayor controls the police department. That's how it works. Every mayor or the city manager, they will tell the police officer what to do. They pick the police chief, and the police chief carries out the agenda of the mayor. So in every progressive city, the cops have the right to go ahead, stop you for a safety issue, and then do what you just said. Hey, I want to go check. You got insurance. And they go into these things like, do you have insurance? Do you have this? Do you have that? All of these things. And when you keep saying no, 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 it raises suspicion where they can get you for more criminal stuff.
So by disclosing more, you put yourself in a compromising position.
Yeah, and then when they're also doing a background check, so you're doing a background check in California or any progressive city, they can do a background check and say, hey, look, we ran a background check because we stopped you for driving, and now we know that you're guilty or wanted in another state or another city. You know what I mean?
And yeah, see, it's BS. Like,
and that's the thing. That really does go against our
rights. And it's funny because you could be busted for on your way to court to figure something out. Like that's happened to people too. It's like, I'm literally going to go pay this parking ticket. And it's like, they get you for that too. That happened to a buddy of mine where he was fined something. He had to show up. This happened to me too, but he was fined. But the thing is, he was en route, but he was stopped for something silly. It's just like, and the thing is, that separate issue now ties into the reason why he was stopped in the past, and then it compounds. It's like, well, then now you can't operate your vehicle because of this, because of that stuff, and his car's a beater. So it's like, you know, there's all kinds of little safety things, but it gives them, the point here is that it gives them a reason to stop you, which is now the basis for more violations of your rights if they deem it necessary. On the basis of something that's so silly. It's like, hey, if your taillight is out, it should be, I'm going to stop, say, hey, change your taillight. And if it's off on warning, okay, bye. But not change your taillight. Oh, wait, hold on. You know what I mean? Now step out, show me your hands. You got license, registration, insurance. And there are people where they were in trouble. Actually, now I remember. People have gotten into trouble because their insurance, right, is from a different state. So there's a little bit of a rousing thing where it's just like, oh, how long have you lived in this state? Why did you get it swapped over in 30? You know, stupid. That's happened to me too, where like my license, I was driving on a California license for a little past the grace period, and it's like it's another thing and another thing and another thing.
Now bring this back to Trump. Do you see how silly it is for all those examples you just said, and being guilty for passing over a grace period or anything else, and then knowing Putin for having a beauty pageant or being on 60 Minutes with them? It's stupid, silly things, but everybody's experienced it. So they go, why not the president? He's not above the law. And that's what people think. Because it happened to you, Why not happening to the president? Why shouldn't it happen to the president? It happens to me. If I could accept it, they have to. But you shouldn't accept it when it happens to you. Like, because people go, why do you always give the cops a hard time? It's like, because I'm not guilty of anything. And if I am, it's because these laws are stupid, you know, but it's the truth. And it goes back to the jury. When you have a jury, it is the jury's responsibility not to follow the law if the law is silly. Because why should you be paying $800 for driving what the flickered taillight if you really wanted to fight it? If you wanted to fight and say, hey, look, my taillights were fine. They didn't see it. Like, seriously, how would they even know if you're, you know, what the car's supposed to do? You know, there's a lot of ways to say stop. You could use hand signals. So stopping somebody for a broken taillight is stupid when you could use hand signals. Right. Seriously, hand signals are just as legal. Bicycles don't have brake lights. So, and they have to follow the same laws we do. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? It's like, so, you know, it's just like the stupidity of us giving up our rights just because somebody has a badge is insane. And that's why I applaud the president for fighting, because why should he give up his rights just because everybody else is saying, oh, you're guilty, or you got to just sit there and take it? No, he shouldn't take it. None of us should take it. And that's the thing. It's like, and I have a lot of cop friends, like really good friends who are cops, like really good friends. Mm-hmm. And they all, you know, even they know what I'm saying is true, because there is not a cop in the world that will not say their job is dangerous. Why is their job dangerous? Because the first thing is, just like what happened in Dallas, it's the public perception of police. In Dallas, you know, the whole Black Lives Matter things, oh, you're killing black people. So those 5 cops were shot, you know, just in a mob rule.
Right.
And that's progressive ideology making us hate police officers, because the cops are just doing their jobs.
And that's the unfortunate thing, is that it bleeds into some other things where you know, you've heard the concept of disparate impact, right?
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is that and that's the problem with mob rule, is unfortunately a couple of individuals, right, from a particular class or whatever, may represent a unfortunate statistic that will disparately impact that population.
Yeah, exactly. And this is how
so that's why it's like the actions of a few cops now is the visual for all cops. Well, all cops are bad.
But you're spot on. And this is why. Because no cop is required. And this is only in progressive cities. Because I don't know what happens in like conservative ran cities. And I don't know of any conservative ran cities. I really don't. I can't think of one conservative ran city other than small towns. So, and because it's a small town, it's different. But in no progressive city are the police officers required to read the Constitution. Not one. And so when you talk to these police officers and you tell them, hey, did you ever read the Constitution? Do you know the Bill of Rights? And he goes, I don't need to. I know the law. Because they know the laws. They just don't know the Constitution.
But the whole point is it's there to protect the individual from the tyranny of government in the first place. So let me ask you this question, because you have more knowledge on this than I do, and it's going to be something that we can, you know, give our listeners an opportunity to know more about. What are some of the laws in some of these progressive cities that are obviously in place that may actually be on the point where they are unconstitutional? It's just that a lot of people don't know it because they don't know their rights. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know the extent of all my rights as well, but I'm learning more about them.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, okay, so this, I know people will disagree, but here's a law that a driver's license is a privilege. That's the law. The law is that driving is a privilege and not a right. But technically, the right to transportation is a constitutional right. The right to move, you know, to and fro, I don't know how to say it, to or fro,
right.
to and fro,
as it's written in their old old lingo because cars didn't exist at the time. But
cars didn't exist, but so that is a constitutional right. So to make it a privilege is unconstitutional, and that is just very basic. It should be a right to drive a car. And, so the people go like, yeah, but we have to regulate it because, people don't know how to drive and all this other stuff or whatnot. And so they're right to an extent. It requires some regulation, but like in California, it is extremely over-regulated. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? There's no need for 30,000 vehicle codes. There isn't. And it's just how they do, with the carpool lanes and
I know, man, they'll get you for anything. They'll get you for, it's like, I was trying to shave 7 minutes off my commute. Too bad, $297 fine. You know what I mean?
Isn't that ridiculous though? And that's like little.
Dude, I used to cheat in and out of the Bay Bridge traffic by just dunking into everyone's done this. You duck in and out of the carpool lane and then you get really good at it after a while.
Yeah, no, and so what other laws are unconstitutional? The whole thing about
insurance.
Oh my God!
Dude, that insurance. I'm gonna say it on the show right now. Insurance is a fascist policy.
Yeah, and it's unconstitutional. It really is. It is unconstitutional. But that's why people really have to really start understanding what the Eighth Amendment really is all about, because people just really, they only think about things like, oh, cruel and unusual punishment. But there's a lot more than it's the loss of liberty. Like, seriously, you could lose your liberty by not having insurance. I'm not kidding you. Yeah. If you don't have insurance, and if you can't afford it, because insurance is a joke. I mean, the whole thing about insurance is a joke. And this is where I can't pronounce that word. Impact comes in, because the insurance companies can literally charge you triple based on your zip code. And that's the law. It's okay. And come on, if you're broke and it's all the broke areas got to pay 3 times more than the rich people. And come on.
Here's the thing also is that it's not just limited to zip code. There's all kinds of other stuff like history and age and all that, all of which, if you think about it from a rights perspective, is discriminatory. Because who's to say, you know what I mean? Like young men. Okay, so here's the thing. And this is another example real quick before you finish your point about disparate impact. A lot of people have the stigma of belief that women cause more car crashes than men, even though their insurance rates are lower. But the thing is, I will say that the truth is men are in more violent accidents, right? But the thing is, we have this, like what I'm trying to say is that the numbers are not, they're not flat and certain, right? Both are the case. But the thing is, women have lower insurance premiums per age group and range than men do.
Yeah, that's BS. No, women are worse drivers. I don't care what anyone says.
Okay, so here's the thing, though. Here's to my next point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because what I was going to say is that it's not reported as much. When a woman hits you in a car, she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for that. Just give me another chance. You drive off. You don't report it. Now, I guarantee you, a man hits your car, you're just going to duke it out right there in the streets. Oh. And the reason why insurance companies are operating off of that is because people report it. So they get this impression that women aren't worse drivers than men. No, it's because no one's reporting women when they hit your car. It's just like, all right, pay me $400 and we'll call it clear.
Or let me take you out. Let me take you out to dinner.
Exactly. So that's not what people talk about, but that's the reason why your insurance statistics are flawed. There are worse.
Or here's another one. You'll see a woman driving down the wrong way on a one-way street, and then you'll do everything to avoid her. And guess what? Just like those drunks who walk out of an accident unscathed and everybody else is dead but the drunk, that's what women drivers are in a lot of ways. Like, they're such bad drivers. Everybody gets out of their way, creating all these accidents. And she's like, oh, did I do that? Well, but I'm not in it, so I'm going to drive off.
Yeah, no, and see, I hate saying that, but because I've had this argument with somebody before, and they go, no, if you look at insurance statistics, women cause less accidents, right? And that's why their premiums are lower. It's not reported as often. Yeah. It's just not reported. It's because here's the thing. A lot of those crashes, right, are like, okay, she rear-ended me, or we got our cars touched on the freeway or whatever. And therefore, a lot of people are like, okay, you know what? Let's just call it cool. I'll pay you $100 and we go our own way. So they're not reported. Therefore, your premiums aren't affected. But you can guarantee that when a man and another man duke it out, it's like, no, you're going to call your insurance. That's just what you're going to do. If it's, you know what I mean? And the problem is, this is disparate impact right here. Men have to pay 3 times an insurance premium per individual of your age group than women do.
Yeah, well, but the reason why they don't call it disparate impact or whatever, because I can't pronounce that word, it's because you have to, in order to qualify like legally for disparate impact or treatment, you have to be one of those protected classes.
Yeah, you have to be able to prove discrimination based on your minority status.
Well, I'm a protected class for being black. Asian, not so much. Like,
hey, that's literally the whole point of the EEOC. If you're a white dude and you go into the EEOC and you're like, hey, I wasn't hired because of this thing, they're going to throw you out the door.
But disparate impact is so different, though. Like, you really have to be like, Chinese guys are not part of the disparate impact. So, like, if I was really wanted to go to take this to trial, I couldn't say that an Asian male is protected. It's not a protected class. So in some aspects they are, but in some aspects they aren't.
It's not very egalitarian.
For insurance, yeah, you guys wouldn't be protected, and that sucks because those are protected.
That's true. We gotta have a
protected class. I mean, it's interesting when you really look at these quote unquote protected classes, but anyway, yeah. No, I'm telling you, man. Like,
that's funny though. We got to have a whole episode where we just talk about insurance and the fascism behind it.
These are laws that totally are built to take away your rights, and everybody's okay with it.
Well, I'll be honest, it's just commonplace. Like, we don't think about it, but that's part of it, where it's just like, yeah, we pay insurance. Can you imagine there's some people that pay $100 a month every month for 10 years and then they don't get into any accidents?
But that's why it's insane. But that's the thing. It's people believe there is some sort of security in that. And it's not, because if your accident, you have medical bills of like $100,000 because let's say you missed a month of work, and I hate to say things like this, but some wobba is going to hit you, right? And his insurance is only $15,000. Well, you think you're going to get more than that out of this dude? Of course not. He's not going to have more than $15K. That, you know, so you have to come up with $85K to cover your bills, and so that you paying $100 a month for 10 years just to get hit by somebody who only has a $15,000 insurance policy and he caused $100,000 of damage, dude, you just wasted all that money. And, and that's why insurance itself is a scam. It's a scam, and the only purpose for it is to take away your liberty, because when you go to jail, guess what? You have no liberty in jail for not having insurance and that, because that's the only thing it's built for. And it really does only applies to, like, in the ghettos and stuff like that.
See, that's the thing, though. Just to give our audiences a listen about street conservatism, right? The way you would handle this, individual rights, is you work out a deal between the two parties. Yep. And that's the thing where I can understand. It's like, if you hit someone's car, it's like, hey, we don't got to call our insurance. Let's just figure it out right here. I'll pay for your bumper. If you agree to these terms, we go away happy. We don't have to call the cops. There's just going to, it's like, here's the thing. Your commute to work just got 6 hours longer because you called the cops. It's like, if I give you $500 and you got my phone number, we work it out right here. Do we really need to call our insurance companies to figure this out? Our premiums are going to go up.
No, but then you'll see these punks. You'll see some of these dudes like, oh, but my back is hurting. It's like, bitch, your back ain't hurting. It is not hurting. I said, if you want it to hurt, I said, we can go down right now. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like, come on. I said, I barely bumped you. But then you got those suckers that are like that. They're like, oh, my back. Oh, I'm injured. No. See, and that's the thing. You have a lot of people like on the streets that hustle that way. Like, oh, and no, but there's a real thing like, oh, low impact injuries.
Yeah.
And you can get like an easy 20, 30,000 bucks. Just you know, but it's a real scam. And that's why like the whole thing about insurance, it's a scam. And the people on the streets are now figuring out how to scam that system. Low impact injuries. You go to a chiropractor, say there's soft tissue damage, and then you got tinnitus or something. Oh, my ears are ringing now. Well, you can't prove it. Yeah, I mean, these are things you just can't prove.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's a way to do it. I mean, hey, people do that with employment too. You know, that's why people are like, that's why workers' comp and even unemployment benefits. It's just like, man, anything that's like insurance related, you could just basically get more than what you were entitled to. So think about this, right? Say you don't work for 6 weeks and you got fired from your job and you're drawing unemployment like UI. You could just go get a job that pays cash.
Yeah. No,
like,
that's what they do.
And that's what they do.
No,
and then I know people that have been on unemployment for like a year.
Yeah.
And they just like collect cash.
It trips me out. Like, how do they do that? But going back to your point in the beginning, remember you read the Fifth Amendment. Remember this. Taking away people's property. Property is also called money. So when they take your money, that's your property they're taking away. And the whole thing with insurance, it goes against the Fifth Amendment because you are doing all of these things to prevent or stop a quote unquote crime that you committed, because it is a crime to hit somebody. And then you're doing all of these things, and that's how they circumvent the Fifth Amendment by using this whole
rhetoric of you know, this could happen. That's why I could never sell insurance. Like I just don't.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, man, it's oh God, no. But anyway, but we have been conditioned to believe all of this stuff, like government is good, fascism is good, but we don't call insurance fascism. We don't call health insurance fascism. We don't say any of that stuff, you know, because we're conditioned to do it. And people don't realize that, I hate to keep saying desperate impact, but you know, these rules are really built to go up against all the poor people, everybody living in the ghetto, and conditioning the rich in the progressive cities that their security, that we are so bad, the people of the streets, you know, the cops, everybody's so bad that for your own safety, your protection, guess what? You keep giving us a lot of money and you never have to see any of this filth and garbage beneath you. That's what the cops are for. That's what, you know, insurance is for. That's what all of these, and so people are stupid because I've yet met a Republican or heard of any Republican saying that insurance was bad. You know, because they live in these glass, I don't care who it is, and I like guys like Mark Levin.
Right.
I guarantee you Mark Levin would never say, hey, insurance is crap. You know what I mean? He wouldn't say that because he buys into that philosophy too. He was like, hey, I don't want to be mingling with people.
Yeah, the whole argument is the what if. Like say you get into a car crash, right, and you're screwed and you can't pay. But here's another problem that people run into. Say your medical bills are $50,000. The thing is, if healthcare wasn't regulated so heavily, your bills wouldn't be $50,000. You'd be able to pay out of pocket.
Yeah, and no, but if you can find doctors that work out of pocket, like dentists,
yeah,
you can go do it.
The thing is,
doctors, optometrists.
That's the problem, is that all of our insurance companies are contingent on each other because nobody really knows the price of an automobile accident, and we don't actually allow the market to determine prices. Because here's the thing: if you could theoretically go to a doctor who is your buddy and he said, no problem, man, I'd stitch you up for $800 as opposed to 80 grand, right? And you could, no, this is conservatism because this is transactional.
No,
like,
exactly.
Dude, I got my leg cut open at an accident. Fix me up. I'll paint your roof. That's conservatism, right? Now, here's the thing. The law mandates that you go through this, you call your insurance, you do that kind of stuff, and you spend all this money. But if you could find a doctor who's like, okay, I'll give you anesthesia and truly unregulated healthcare, where it's like, okay, he has a license to practice medicine, but he can take you on, like, you pay for provider. It's like $800. I'll fix you up your leg. Same thing with a mechanic. It's like he doesn't have to call your insurance. It's like, fix my bumper for $500 and I'll do this for you.
Yeah, but
that's how it should be. It's like,
and that's how it used to be, dude. Like,
that's how it used to be.
well, but I know this might sound a little crazy, but no, like if you're a farm worker, like how they work the farms, dude, I used to know a lot of dudes that used to, pick grapes.
Yeah.
They call, like, we used to call them piqueros and stuff, because that's what they would do. They pick up the grapes and the strawberries off the floor, because it's just how agriculture works. But they would go to a doctor, and the doctor would do it for free in exchange. Like, their wife would babysit and do housekeeping, and you would just amass all of these maids. And I don't know if this one doc still does it, but, if they ever found out, dude, they'd probably put him in prison for human trafficking. You know what I mean? But
right.
In theory, it's like, hey, look, man, my work as a doctor doing whatever it is that he does for these people, because he actually performed a surgery on one of these cats.
Mm-hmm.
And, a surgery has to go for at least $25,000, $30,000. And that's like 1 year's worth of babysitting. You know what I mean? How much do you pay a babysitter? $30,000 a year? That's a lot for a babysitter. So, but then, a lot of people, that you're just taking advantage of these poor little piqueros and stuff like that. And it's like, they don't have any money. It's trade for services. And trade for services, you can't tax that.
Well, that's actually another thing I was going to say, is that if everything operated off of that thing where you didn't have to follow a mandated guidebook of regulations and all that, think about this. If all of those favors all happen unregulated, like it is in the streets, whether you're dealing drugs or you're, hey, I'll give you my TV, you give me your couch, like that kind of thing, the government can't tax you. Therefore, they can't fund their stupid agencies that don't do anything for people, because there's no money for that. That's why FDR's excise taxes on farmers and stuff were so effective, and we're still feeling the effects today. It's like, can you imagine back in the 30s when FDR came in? And by the way, this is undeniable, FDR was an admirer of Mussolini. So a lot of those policies from the New Deal are fascist policies, right? Here's a perfect example of that. Fascism, I know, is all like national origin, class system, that kind of thing. But the government owning the means of production is the first step of a fascist government. So what did FDR do? It's like, hey, I'm going to pay farmers to not produce. I'm going to pay Henry Ford to not, take steel from Pittsburgh Steel and make cars out of it. That's what he was doing.
And that's crazy. I'm telling you, but it's an acceptable way to live. Everybody's like they're okay with that.
After finding out more about progressive history and learning more about real conservatism, I'm just like, no. Like, if I had it my way, I would just have buddies that just knew how to do stuff, and then we would all just trade our services for goods and stuff. That's conservatism. That's it right there.
I know this one dude, and we're not really close, but so I'll give this clue out. This guy, if you look up Jennifer K. Toy, she's the lady suing Laughlin and somebody else for $500 billion.
What's her name? Jennifer what?
K. Toy.
How do you spell that?
Toy, T-O-Y. And then just look up Jennifer K. Toy, $500 billion lawsuit. You'll see it on the website. So
Jennifer K. Toy?
Yeah.
Or is it just Jennifer Toy?
Yeah, Jennifer Toy. But if you want to see the lawsuit, because, dude, it's all everywhere. It was on People Magazine, Entertainment Magazine, everywhere, dude, because she's suing those people that did the scandal for $500 billion.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the college admissions scandal.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, that's right. When you said Laughlin, I was like, Lori Laughlin? Like,
Lori Laughlin and all those. So, okay, so her buddy, and I know him through her, he actually has made a an electric battery that can go 5,000 miles per charge.
Whoa.
And he has been offered a lot of money to, for his batteries and stuff like that, but not enough. He wants way more. So that guy, I don't want to say his name, but that guy with those kind of smarts, that guy, he's been trying to create an economy where everybody's trading for services, but it can't be done because
can't be done. Not here in America.
Well, it's not just that. Oh, it can't be done on a grand scale. It never can. But the thing is, when people are all twisted, like with their thinking, it won't work because, I hate to say this, he won't put a patent on it because he doesn't want anybody to find out about his technology. Like, he took it to Tesla, Toyota. They offered him money, but not enough. He wants enough money to start a colony on the moon. I am not kidding you. And, but it's the truth. He really wants to start a colony on the moon. And that's how much money he wants for his battery. Enough to fund 5,000 people to go to the moon, and he starts his colony there. And even that is going to fail. But that said, the trade for services is a great idea. I really like that idea because I kind of live that way.
I'm starting to live that way slowly but surely.
Yeah, well, but you always need money, so you always have to have ways to make hard cash. But it's also always good to have a system where you can get things done from people. And it's just trade for services. They want opportunities. You can give them opportunities for the opportunities that they give you. And that's good. That's smart. And, but that will never happen, ever, because everybody's already has a mentality to give up their rights, especially their Fifth Amendment right, because progressive ideology has made living. You are a human being. Just being a human, normal human stuff, is now against the law. So driving is against the law unless you meet hundreds of thousands of codes that you can never meet. So you are a criminal. You get in the car, you start it, you're a criminal.
Yeah.
So automatically, just being a human, you are against the law. And when you have all that stuff against you, come on, most people, they get suicidal. Like all of these, people who run away from the cops, it's a real thing, suicide by cop. Why? Because, look, they got no place else to go but death. And they embrace it. Cops are down for it. Because why? Everybody's embracing this suicidal behavior. It's amazing how we just accept so much and then we just lose value as humans. Because think about this. If you honestly see a cop as your enemy, or if you're suicidal and just you're in debt, whatever, and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to pretend to have a gun and I'm going to go talk to a cop and make him shoot me. And cops are going to do it because they know no better. They're not trained for any of this. They're not, well trained in how to use a gun. And their first instinct is to be afraid of everyone. And that's why judges allow this to happen all the time too, because they'll say it all the time. A cop's job is very dangerous. And it is. Why is it very dangerous? Because we've made it very dangerous. Because the most dangerous human is a human trying to stay alive. And if you're fighting for your life, well, of course you're going to be dangerous. And that's what it is in any progressive city. I don't care if it's Chicago, Oakland, LA. It's a fight for your life for all of these poor people.
Right.
They're not fighting against the cops, or you're really fighting against policies. Because he asked, and we don't have enough time, but the biggest law that goes against the Constitution is how we set up education. Because the whole thing about insurance took us on another way. But education is something we are being denied based on zip code or the house you may or may not own. And that's a big one. And that's why it's always going to be a fight for your life, because without education, without the ability to transport yourself from point A to point B in peace, holy smokes, what do you expect?
Yeah.
And then when you have that mentality, you know what? If it's happening to me, let it happen to the president. And everybody's bought into it. And that's why everything is so dangerous.
So let's bring it back in the last few minutes of this podcast where we talk about the Mueller report and the obstruction of justice. What this is that it outlines the unconstitutional nature and the complicitness of the American people to allow something like this to happen. Now, again, when the Mueller report was initially proposed and instigated, I didn't know very much about it, and I wasn't actually plugged into politics as much, but I can see it now through our discussion how because people have given up their rights, it's almost like it's normal. It's like if the FBI knocked on your door and said, I need to search this place, sir. You got to give me all this. It's almost like most of us would go, yeah, come on in. Take a look at all my stuff. Oh, I need to take this from you. Sure. I got a gun. It's, you know what I mean? It's like we don't know our Constitution, and I'm only recently starting to really dial it in and see that, hey, you have these rights. And it's funny because it kind of really marries everything together, because the government now is the source of your freedom. At least for a lot of people, they think government does this, government does that, which is why progressive ideology is all about, at least even for rational progressives, it's not even about how do I help myself survive in this world and help my neighbor. It's who is the least corrupt of all these politicians, let's vote them in. But it doesn't matter. The scope of government is too large. FDR and Woodrow Wilson made it so big. Those two presidents are singularly responsible in the 20th century and now into the 21st century of making the government so big.
Well, Wilson started it.
Yeah, Wilson started it. And, government became huge. And institutionalized racism was ever more present, under his administration, that now it's almost commonplace, right? But see, here's the thing. Even a lot of so-called woke people will think of this as like, well, I see racism taking place and I know that this is happening. But this is what I've appreciated about our conversations on this podcast with you, is that when you tie it in with the street and you tie it in with history and the streets, it's like that, because that's real life.
Well, you'll love this then, because remember what you said. FDR studied Mussolini.
Yeah.
So what are the progressive like Wilson? Who do they study? And this might sound crazy, but remember this, and I said this earlier at the beginning. The founders of this country were criminals of the king, of English law. And they started this country with the same mentality that we have in the streets. And
that's why it's a conservative country.
Yeah, but not because everybody goes, no, man, what about them crackheads and meth heads? No. But see, not those people from the streets, but real people like you and me that want to make it from the streets and be successful. That's our founders had the same mentality. And the progressives know that. So their biggest threat to their kingdom, because it is basically a monarchy.
Yeah, it is.
Progressives
or an oligarchy where it's ruled by a group.
Well, no, but in their mind, because of their ego, they don't believe in God. I know it because you have to be an atheist to see other atheists, and these guys are all atheists. So because I know a lot of kings believed in God, but the kings of England did not believe in God. That's why they broke away from the church and they just started doing things. They became their own idols. And that's what's happening in modern progressives. They are their own kings. They're their own gods.
Here's one thing that you'll love, though. If you start reading the Gospels, man, which I encourage you to do, and you start looking at Jesus's journey, you will see all the ties of classical liberalism and true conservatism. Because
but here's the thing. I told you yesterday, I'm going to get into that.
His disciples, man, tax collectors, fishermen, farmers, and what did they do? They preached around, went from home to home. It's like, you know what I mean? You're gonna see it, but I don't want to conflate the ideas of the Gospels in an incorrect way. I want you to look at them yourselves. But here's the last thing I'll say too: we forget, and a lot of progressives who are just kind of going through life, a lot of people don't really know this. The whole term of liberalism, as it's originally intended, is liberalism as in liberated from Great Britain. but you were a criminal. Had you lost had you lost the American Revolution, guess what would have happened to you? They would have hung you, probably cut you into pieces, and you'd be made an example of. Honestly.
Yeah, no,
true.
and that's the thing. So like, and to make it like super, super simple for everybody to understand, today's progressives, they know the biggest threat to their kingdom or their idolatry or whatever it is that they believe in is us, people with dissenting thoughts. So they got to squish it before it ever happens. Yeah. And that's what's happening now. Trump is a dissenter, so everybody try to squish him. But man, that dude, that's why I got to give him props, because man, he's surviving everything. And he's not a young dude.
He's from the streets. And now here's the thing that I also want our listeners to understand. When we say from the streets, I'm not saying poor, meth head or anything, because Trump is a street conservative. No, he's a street conservative. Even though he was born into a wealthy family, it's got nothing to do with that. It's this.
Yeah,
it's this fight. It's the fight mentality, and it's the know what your freedoms are. That's all a street conservative is. And the reason why we're going to start coining this term, it's going to be a recurring theme on this show. I feel like we're the only commentators who are talking about street conservatism.
Yeah, no, but Trump did have.
You got to look at how people in these neighborhoods on the streets actually survive, get things done. It's not with more police. It's not with, I'm going to call my insurance and see if they can take care of me. Nah, if you break a window, I have to fix it for you.
Yeah. But if I can't afford it, I'll work for you. You know,
I am indebted to you. You own my time because I don't have the resources to pay you. And that's just how it used to be.
Female drivers. When a female driver hits you, she don't have no cash.
Yeah, her looks basically get her off the hook.
No, but I'm telling you now,
of that. The reason why the premiums
for an hour.
No, but the reason why those premiums are lower for women is because a lot of those insurance claims go unreported.
Unreported.
And I didn't know that. People were like, "Oh, well, you just sound like a massage." I'm like, "No, those are true stats." Like the reason why men have higher premiums is, and people say, "Well, hold on, men cause more reckless accidents." No. Men and women cause equal amounts of accidents. It's just that women's don't get reported as often. How often, that's the last thing I'll say is like you hit a woman's car, right? And it's like not a big deal. Really? You're going to call the cops? No, you guys are going to go your own way.
Now, but believe it or not, cops don't even go out anymore. They don't do traffic calls. Like in San Francisco, they don't respond unless someone's been seriously injured. But beyond that, they don't even go out and report anymore. So it just doesn't make any sense. Like, then why are there cops? If you guys aren't doing all of these things, how are you guys getting revenue from everybody? So, I mean, like San Francisco's just a mess. But, but anyway, but going back to what we're talking about, always remember this whole thing with the Mueller report and is just nothing more than conditioning us to believe that we have to give up our rights, our individuality, our way to think, like get a sovereign thought in your head. Any original thought is not sought by any progressive. You just gotta just look around you. Talk to your professors. They don't want to hear it. They only want to hear the progressive point of view. Nothing else. It doesn't matter who you speak to. You talk to a judge. You go to a judge. They know what's unfair, but they go, well, by these sentencing guidelines, I gotta give the minimum, and it's $581 for a second violation of carpool driving. And but it's the truth. That's how it works. And they know it's unfair. They know it's unjust. But what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? So it's everybody's conditioned to go along with it because not breaking a rule can cost you your life. I mean, when you break a rule, it can cost you your life. It can cost you your livelihood. Because if a judge went rogue and go, you know what? I'm not going to do what California tells me to do because this is too unfair. It's too high. He will lose his job. They will disbar him. And if they disbar him, well, he can't be a judge because every judge is an attorney. So, you know what I mean? You can get into a lot of trouble by dissenting. And Trump dissented, and look at him. I mean, he's still surviving, but for how long can this guy keep fighting? Like I'm shocked at his age he didn't die of a heart attack or
no, it's all working out. But
Trump is street because his brother Fred died from alcoholism.
Yeah.
So
That's why he never touched the drink. Dude, he's very similar to how we think, actually.
Dude, I never drank too because I knew. You see it on the streets, like, I'm not going to be no crack, and I'm not doing any drugs, no drinking, no drugs.
No drugs or drinking, yeah. It's funny because it's like the irony here is conservatism, weirdly enough, is also very straight edge, right? Even though that's a punk mindset. Like, but it is straight edge. It's like when you kind of distill everything down, we realize like, okay, probably a good idea not to take mind-altering substances. Another thing too, probably not a good idea to engage in promiscuity as well.
Yeah.
That's another thing, right? And those are so-called straight edge ideas, but it's conservative principles. It's like,
No, but I'm telling you now, just from personal experience, it destroys you. It almost destroyed Trump too. Because he wouldn't have been president, and they tried him with that grab him by the vagina,
comment.
But I'm telling you, those are really, that's my only vice, man. Those are bad vices to have, and because that's your weakness, that's your kryptonite. So drugs, alcohol, you need something, and Trump.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of American Made and Paid. Once again, I'm Zach King, and I got my host, Professor Dreg, with us. We'll be talking more about some other topics relating to this, like suicide in first world countries. So stay tuned for that in future episodes. All right, take care, everybody.